Let me just share my screen. Can you see my screen, Anthony?
I can't, but I have a specific problem with my laptop. Any of the others can see it? Hi, Jay.
Yes, I can see it.
Yeah, all right, okay. So let's carry on. So thank you, Anthony, and everyone. So as a follow-up from the introduction that John put forward, a couple of key takeaways straight away from there is the concept of the big bangs. That's our key concerns that operators have: the cost, understanding what is it that they have to do with all these digital elements. So what I'm going to do in this presentation is to basically target an overall application scheme in a defined project flow to present this to you. The application of these services are on the rise, but we are respecting our client confidentiality, so I cannot basically go and present your project, but the process flow will be there. So I want to dig a little bit more into the implementation of these elements. So I'm going to start with a short 2-slide presentation of what the challenge is and what the solution suite actually is, and then from there taking on the application of it. The AI-driven technologies, I think, as part of this presentation as driving growth, what this concept does is it groups them to be managed towards an ultimate holistic purpose and get them to be understood, which as we are all bombarded all the time with all these different definitions. So without further ado, currently this slide just represents a summary of what the challenges the industry faces. We all seen this and we read them every day. The conditions for the that we face in terms of trade and operations in each country is very different, and it's affected as like the pandemics, for example. The market is flooded with fragmented standalone offerings, which in themselves, each one has their own merit. But how do you put all that thing together to make sure that you are actually harnessing what they actually mean and actually squeezing the actual value that they have? The market is needing a focus also in business and technical solutions which are sustainable, resilient, and adaptable. We hear this all the time. And this need of being adaptable basically requires customization of what you're doing, not only offerings of what you are doing. So all these definitions and there are out there, and they need to be harnessed into what applies to each port, to each client, to each budget, etc. So about 3 years ago, we started this journey all together. And we basically grouped our expertise into 3 main solution groups, which focus on business, technical, and intelligence solutions. Each one of the partners that are in this presentation and in these slides add a very fundamental contribution to each one of those stages and combined, because we are all involved in these stages. As we go along, I'll explain that a little bit further. So in the next slides. So the focus of this was not only grouping all the different partners, technologies into one single offering, but having this group together, it makes it next generation ready. So we group and focus on not only designing the infrastructure of a terminal, the infrastructure design or repurposing of a terminal, of the infrastructure of it, is heavily affected by all these different factors of the operation, and the way to predict and to understand really what for example, the remaining life of your asset in an asset management perspective. You can take it out of a digital twin. You can take it out of the projections of cargo that actually are happening real time and be projected in time. So the power that this has is really unparalleled, and we are harnessing that right now, and is starting to bring a lot of clarity into understanding what is it that clients have in their terminals and where to put the money. So the application, this is a solution application flow. It's just an example. But the important thing about this example is that you can be at any stage of your terminal life maturity, and you can pick and choose any of these different elements. This is just a flow, traditional flow of what a project would go through, the inception and engineering, development, and the execution. So in the front end activities of the project, for example, we help you develop and update the master plan of your facility and develop your CapEx and OpEx models. We help you, for example, in your concession transactions, or if you're going to extend your concession. Many of these concessions are coming to an end. Some clients need help on extending these concessions. Others are handing over their facilities and so on. So all these different things we help, and we help you with the front end engineering. Now, where does this work, for example? Where does all this group of companies fit in here? Well, when you do the master plan, traditionally, people look at a master plan as a civil engineering exercise, which actually is not correct to look at it that way. The master plan follows the operational and business needs of the port or the facility, which is then translated into civil engineering, which gives you how much is it going to be, how long is it going to take. So by harnessing and utilizing digital twins and utilizing, for example, the projections of the operations, we can work a master plan which is aligned with your actual business needs, not aligned with the civil engineering of it, which is traditionally what happens. So when you pass that stage, you go into your engineering part, the development, and there you, for example, start developing in more detail your modes of operation. You start doing your terminal modeling and engineering designs. You develop your equipment specifications, your TOS system specifications, and everything that I mentioned above, you recirculate that and you value engineer what you're doing. So you can actually even find further optimizations in what you're actually developing or expanding or whatever based on those elements when you put them all together. Because normally what happens is the client goes and does all this terminal modeling and all that. They come up with all these different things, and nobody thinks about what's the impact of that in the civils, for example, or the equipment. So there's a lot of fine tuning elements that happen in these stages that will save you money later on in the life cycle of your asset. And during the execution, well, you got to go and buy the cranes and build the thing. So the difference here is that when we do the execution, we do it all together. We're all thinking how and when all this is going to happen and integrating that in the delivery and commissioning. So you align your sequence of startup very closely. So you don't have, you're buying the cranes that you don't know when they're going to come, and then the TOS is going to put the TOS, and then you have to train the drivers, and you have the operators to train. Well, for example, you have the autonomous operations of AI drivers. You don't have to worry about that because your manpower, you don't have to be snatching operators from other terminals. You will not need them. Yeah. So there are all these different elements that overall they bring you efficiency and risk mitigation in the different interfaces, that everything that happens in your terminal development, they're all in the same place, yeah, and managed at the same time. So this is a graphical example of an existing terminal. Basically, the client vision or their goal is to develop a brownfield site or modified or whatever, whichever we want to call it. Obviously, they want to automate their operations, maximize their ROI, and then they have their targets of achieving a certain level of autonomy or automation, and then tick the box, sustainable, be resilient, and you want to have components of decarbonization. So we go through all this process by repurposing the infrastructure, for example, where we evaluate what your current operations are and how basically we lift the infrastructure digitally to understand its composition and how it's being utilized. So when you basically digitally uplift this infrastructure, basically what is how that you transform it into a a model or a digital twin. As I mentioned earlier, you can predict equipment movements, traffic flows, which equals load patterns. And then, for example, if it's an existing facility like this one, okay, what's my residual design life? It's always a guess game in engineering, but with these elements, you can actually have much more level of certainty and equals saving money. Or maybe you have to spend more money. So that's the advantage of that. So you would go, for example, in the right side of the slide where you have AI-driven operating systems. In this part, for example, IGO solutions would come in. The autonomous retrofitting of equipment, you would have trained and AI drivers working on the equipment. You can either buy new one, retrofit the existing, you can combine them, etc. Having the digital asset management, which I said is basically you uplift your infrastructure into a digital environment, and you can have all these elements procured with the platform of iSpec, which Peter is going to discuss later. So it's not really complicated, and you don't really have to do all these things, but maybe one or two of these things that would apply for your port is having that visibility of understanding what is it that can you do with what you have, and it's not necessarily has to be expensive, because that's one of the conceptions that we have we have faced with some clients. They're very concerned on how much is it going to cost. Why should I do this if I'm already doing this the way I am and it's okay? Well, things are changing, and some places quicker than others. So if you are not really thinking in your facility to embrace these different elements, then I think you better start thinking about that. So the future for us, we want to make the services offering really more visible, interconnected, more accessible. So basically people really understand better overall, what is it that the future, how is this industry going towards? Yeah, simplify its understanding, as well as I said, and its application, and also make the AI systems, the operations, predictive maintenance, all these elements become common. So when you buy or you procure equipment or you procure the service, they already come with it. Yeah, so you don't have to go and buy something from another person. It's all there. Yeah, interrelate these objectives with the process flows. That means this is a very important one, because if you, for example, automate or you become a terminal autonomous, or you change to electric or battery or hydrogen energy source, you're by default becoming more resilient and more sustainable. You're ticking those boxes as you go along. Yeah, so it's part of the agenda, is in default. And basically at the end is just continue as a positive disruption to what we do and what everybody else does, using these technology interrelationships in all the different port applications, projects, and operations. So that's it for me, and thank you very much.